Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our final bootcamp, final workshop. If you notice, I'm in a different location. We're in our other office this evening because our normal office has an event on, which would have sounded like we're sat in a pub. So change of scenery for tonight. So just give it a second for everyone to join. There we go. So hopefully everyone has enjoyed the last 3 days, and well done for anyone that's attended all three and this evening. That's a big commitment out of your free time in the week. But yeah, if people just want to put in the chat maybe their favourite part so far, what they're looking forward to. And then yeah, in a second we'll get going. So host for this evening, as has been for the last few nights, is myself, and Tyler is here with me as well. He's monitoring the chat, looking at all your questions. So as always, we will do a Q&A at the end of this evening's session. So any questions, just pop them in the chat box and we'll get round to them at the end. So congratulations, well done guys. Again, any of you that have managed to attend all four, that is brilliant and a really good sign of commitment, because yeah, about 2 hours every night is a lot of time. It's been we've really enjoyed it, haven't we, Tyler?
Yeah, and it's just been actually so nice to see all the positive comments, and in the chat on the Facebook group. It really means a lot because there has been a lot of work gone into this, especially over the last couple of weeks. A lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings. Even today, for example, has just been flat out getting everything ready for this, while at the same time running a full-time property development company. We're actually imminently completing, it was meant to be this week, it's been pushed back to this week now.
For next week, yeah.
Completing on one of our sites. So we've been managing investment, speaking with multiple investors, the 2 banks that are involved in it, the landowners, and all the other stakeholders and solicitors. So it's been super stressful, but we do really appreciate all the kind words and your time as well, all of your guys' time. So to remind you all, I'm sure many of you are very excited about this part, we do have our competition and the winner will be announced at the end of this session. So it is a 12-month access to our core coaching and mentorship program, Property Development Mastery, including the weekly Q&A calls, a 1-hour business planning session one-on-one with myself, and a VIP invite to our Inner Circle networking event at the end of October. So yeah, we're going to announce the lucky winner at the end. We've just picked, we've done a random name generator from all the entries for that. So yeah, what a week it has been, and what we're going to cover today. Firstly, we're going to help you map out a clear action plan of where you can go from here, the easier and faster path to property development success, announcing our competition winner, and some incredible success stories to get you inspired if you aren't already. So just to look back on what we've done so far this week. So workshop 1, we introduced property development and the entire property development process. We had a look at understanding basic planning permission principles to establish whether or not a site will have precedent to obtain planning. We looked at the 7 types of sites and how to use our mapping softwares to identify our potential opportunities. And we really sort of drove home the importance of finding great opportunities and why doing this makes the entire process 10 times easier and more fun. So this is something that we've really, a theme that's ran throughout all the workshops, is the fundamentals of that right deal right from the get-go. So let's just recap on the process. So for our sites without planning, and this is obviously the core of what we teach, the core of what we do. So first of all, you've got to identify your opportunity. So that's applying those planning principles, looking at your mapping softwares, maybe working your network to find an opportunity. You're going to approach that opportunity normally with a letter. Secure your site with an option agreement. So our option agreement is that all-important purchase contract that gives you the right, but not the obligation, to purchase that parcel of land. At this point, our first exit strategy comes in, which is to assign that option agreement to a secondary purchaser for a fee. So this is our first way of making money out of the deal. But you might choose to go on, and at that point you would pursue planning permission and hopefully achieve your planning. Brings us into our other exit strategy that you can use without having to build out, which is the back-to-back. And essentially what you're doing in this situation is selling it on to another developer for the planning gain, for that uplift in the land value. But again, you might choose to go to the next step, which is going to be to purchase your site and commence building works, which brings out 3 key exit strategies, which is the build, refinance, rent, build to sell, and the build, sell as a self-build. And then just quickly, we will touch on obviously sites with planning, because that is also an option, although not at its core what we teach. So in that situation, you're going to secure the site with a purchase contract. You're going to undergo the standard conveyancing process, purchase a site and commence building works. And then our 2 exit strategies being build, refinance, rent, and build to sell. And then in workshop 2 on Tuesday, we looked at the site checks and due diligence required to establish whether an identified site is a viable opportunity, how to approach the landowners of sites that you've identified, and how to systemize this process. Understanding the key design principles and how to design an initial site layout. The numbers involved with a financial appraisal in order to understand what is that piece of land worth. So that's a really, really important part of the process, because if you don't understand how to appraise and value land, you're going to be offering too much or perhaps not enough and never getting offers accepted. But probably after finding the right opportunity, these 2 go hand in hand as the most fundamentally important things. So what's the sort of workflow behind actually finding our sites? So it's identify that opportunity, approach the opportunity, and obviously those follow-up letters. And I think we spoke about this on the first or second workshop, how important the follow-up is. Most people respond in the follow-up. Our site checks and due diligence. Can anyone remember any of the site checks and due diligence out of interest? Because there was quite a few of them, and I know a lot of you got them when we sort of said, can you guess? But I wonder if any of you can actually remember any of them. You need to design the initial scheme, so that's using ProMap. Again, can anyone remember any of the key sort of design principles or things that we have to consider when designing a site with ProMap? Once we've got our design, we're going to conduct a full financial appraisal. So this is to figure out, what is the land worth and what would we be willing to offer. And of course, once we know what we want to offer, we'll make our offer and enter negotiations.
I've got a few answers coming in. Tom said, obviously, floodplain, flood zoning, access, tree preservation orders, contamination, conservation area, asbestos, of course, again, part of contamination. Design principles, we've got turning heads, bell mouths, highways, section 106 and SIL, that goes into the appraisal. Lots of answers coming in.
Brilliant. Well remembered, there's a lot to have taken in. So workshop 3, yesterday, we looked at how development finance works and the use of debt and equity to form the capital stack. The use of your own capital, or that using your own capital is a finite resource, and why the top 1% of property players raise private finance. How to attract investors and get them to actually agree to work with you. So it's not only finding them, but it's actually being able to do the deal with them. And then very importantly, how to raise finance legally and compliantly so that you stay on the right side of the law. So sometimes it seems like a very boring topic, but it's so important, and it's particularly hot at the minute, particularly in the market of raising equity. So again, just to recap, this is our capital stack. A lot of your light bulb moments actually from yesterday revolved around this, and you guys said this was really interesting. But again, it's just sort of looking at that total lending stack being made up of a combination of our senior debt and equity, and that there are 2 sort of key important things about this is the priority order. So what that means is who gets paid back first, and how our senior debt always gets paid back first, as it sits on a first charge, so has the strongest priority. And then as you move through from debt until equity, equity has the sort of last priority, so to speak. But because equity has the last priority, it's seen as the highest risk and therefore the highest return for the people putting that money in. But if you were looking at this from the sort of developer perspective, what this means is your senior debt is your cheapest money, so debt's the cheapest and equity becomes the most expensive because of the risk associated with the two types of lending. And then we looked at structuring our deals with investors. So obviously we're going to get the bulk of lending sort of shown by this diagram, sort of 60-70% of our lending from the banks in the form of senior debt, and this is going to be on a interest basis. But then that sort of deficit to get to the total cost is topped up with equity. And if that's coming in from our private investors, the reward for this is in the form of a profit share. So they will take a share of the profits from that deal. So let's just take a look at some of your biggest breakthroughs and light bulb moments from the last week. So Martin said, and I like this one, I can see potential development sites everywhere I go now. Yeah, I love that. And you've identified a nice one there. Nice sort of corner plot. And yeah, that's exactly it. People don't realise until they learn how to spot sites that there really is opportunity everywhere. You just need to know how to find it. So we're really glad that we've managed to open your eyes a bit.
It's almost like the saying, I was blind, but now I see. as soon as you understand planning principles and everything, your eyes are open to this, you just end up driving around. And I remember countless times, well, all the time I'm driving around and so, oh, that's a potential site. I
remember being younger, whenever my dad used to drive us anywhere, we'd be like, Dad, hurry up, you're driving so slow. Because he'd be driving past stuff, like looking out the window. Obviously, now I know looking at sites because I do the exact same thing.
And just on that, it'll be interesting to see if anyone else has experienced this in the chat. I know we both have on multiple occasions, but for years you'll drive past a site and think, oh yeah, that's a potential site, I'm going to get round to speaking to them, and then time goes by, you don't get round to it,
busy,
and then you see someone else developing it, and you'll begin to see it now as you drive past development sites that are being built around where you live, and maybe somewhere you've lived for a long time, and then you remember what it was before.
You'll think, oh, what was that? And then you'll think of it now and you'll actually think, oh, it was probably a brownfield site or whatever. It all comes together. The curtains are opened. Curtains are open? Blinds are open? You know what I'm trying to say. Tom has said the whole bootcamp just reinforces how vital it is to be finding good off-market sites to create planning gain. Yeah, so like I said at the start, I believe at least this is the fundamental skill, because yes, you can know construction in and out, you can be really savvy with finance, but unless you've got that fundamental deal in the first instance, sort of all of this falls to the wayside. So, you know, if you can take anything away from this, it's that. You know, don't focus on anything else that falls behind that. Focus on that first, and the rest follows, or follows a lot easier. Sam has said, my biggest breakthrough or revelation this week is the realisation that it's possible to get started in property development and start a successful business with grit and determination. So, you know, although we can give you all the knowledge, give you all the tricks and everything like that, it still doesn't come easy. You've got to put in the hours, got to put in the work. You know, I can't tell you how many hours I've unfortunately sat looking at appraisals, looking at ProMaps and Nimbus. It's a skill that you've got to really home in. Emmanuel said the biggest breakthrough is the appraisals. So yeah, that's a really, really important part of the process. If you don't know what goes into an appraisal, can't conduct an appraisal, you can have a piece of land that could be the most valuable piece of land on earth, but if you can't realise that value via an appraisal, it's worthless. So yeah, good takeaway. I've even had someone here, Ryan, actually taking some action on Thursday afternoon, so very well done. I can see you took the comment about actually using first class stamps rather than franking machine, so well done. I think that's maybe the quickest anyone's ever took something we say and put it into action, so that was great to see. And then just a few more light bulb moments. There was so many, so really appreciate you all taking the time to comment and, not only just attend these webinars, but we can really see from this that people taking notes, actioning it. Just the fact you've gone to such detail in these comments really shows the level of effort that's gone in. So well done to all of you guys. So what does the development roadmap look like? So you've learned all these bits of knowledge. Where does it all sit in? So identifying the opportunity. We looked at this on Monday. How do you spot, what makes a development site a site?
And I think this slide is very important because there's, especially for the people on this bootcamp that are completely new to development and they came into this sort of in a mindset where they don't know what they don't know, and it's easily quite overwhelming. There's so much to learn, and so what we wanted to do was sort of show you guys the roadmap start to finish, and then you'll begin to see exactly how much you've learned in literally just 4 evenings.
Start piecing
3 evenings so far.
Piecing that knowledge sort of onto this roadmap. So identifying the opportunity, that's what we looked at. You've got your on and off market opportunities. The approach and the follow-up, so that was our letters. The way we do that, we obviously teach doing a mail merge, virtual assistants to systemize that. The site checks and due diligence, so just checking that initial viability, and you guys again did really well at remembering a lot of those site checks. Designing your initial scheme, so looking at ProMap, how many units can I fit on, what sort of size units, applying all of that to your financial appraisal, and that includes conducting your market research to figure out, this unit, what would it sell for. Entering into our negotiations is the next step. Once we've negotiated the deal, you're going to enter your purchase contract. So again, if you guys remember, that is our option agreement, the option to purchase. We'll then pursue planning permission, because of course these sites need planning. And don't forget, we've already, at this stage in the journey, you would have had 2 exit opportunities. So at entering the purchase contract, you could have assigned it, and then sort of at this stage, you could look to sell it on with the benefit of planning. But these sort of next steps sort of happen somewhat in tandem. You're going to pursue planning. You're going to start looking at raising the debt from the bank. So remember, the debt versus raising our equity from private finance. And then combination of planning coming through, debt being approved, and private finance being acquired, you're going to purchase your site. You're then going to deliver the project, so most likely you're going to build it out. Oh, I skipped a bit past there. But yeah, so that's the entire process. Let me just bring that back up on screen. But yeah, so you've learned bits of knowledge for pretty much every single one of these stages so far. Obviously, we didn't go too much into the physical delivery because the construction would be, a whole nother 4-day boot camp in itself to even begin to skim the surface. But what we've tried to show you is that, within the 4 days, we've really hopefully opened your eyes to exactly just what goes into development. Because obviously, I'm sure you guys all drive past sites and see them going up, but that's, as you can see, the very last stage almost. So much goes into these deals before you even put a spade in the ground. And hopefully you guys can really see that now.
And the skill and where you really win is when you really excel and do this front loading as best as you can, because like the main point we mentioned at the start, when you can find the sites with little competition, get them a good price, add value at planning, add value effectively by designing the most sort of valuable scheme, you can get the mains contractors, and you don't have to be a construction wizard,
expert, no.
Which I'm not at all, and
I know construction well, but by no means am I a construction expert. But I always say this to people, you really don't want to be. Construction is difficult. There are a million more moving parts than even you see here with the construction. Mm-hmm. But with a mains contractor, you just watch someone else do that and enjoy it. So why would you ever want to do anything else?
Yeah, so again, main point is when you get good at finding good deals, you know how to raise finance, you know how to put the deal together. The rest kind of just looks after itself as long as you have the right team in place, the right systems in place. What you don't want to be doing is buying a site with tight margins, and then you're trying to subcontract it and you don't really know what you're doing, and you can't afford a good contractor and
can't afford a good team.
You're trying to then make your profit by skimping on the construction, which is just always going to end badly. So that's why the main focus has been on developing the skills that you can make it that a little bit more sophisticated to acquire the sites for the better prices.
So what now? Your development roadmap. There are many different ways to create profit from property development, and there is no one-size-fits-all strategy. I know we've spoke about a few exit strategies, but really there could be a combination of these, and how you explore these over the next years. There isn't just one strategy that fits one model. Your action plan from here depends entirely on your goals, your current experience, and of course your available capital. But don't let your lack of resources like capital, experience, or knowledge stop you from getting started completely. One of the most important skills in property or in business in general is resourcefulness. No one has all the resources, but the successful ones are the ones that know how to be resourceful and seek the opportunity. You must change your I can't to how can I. The only person stepping between you and your goals is you. Tyler, this is your slide. You love Tony.
Yeah, I'm guilty of being a massive Tony Robbins fan. But if anyone's been to Tony's events, I've been to a few. I've tried to drag Rosey to a few in the past, but this quote really stands out, that it's not about your resources, it's about your resourcefulness. And we can all complain about how little resources we have. Maybe we don't have enough money, enough knowledge, enough skills, enough contacts. And as we begin to document more of what myself and Rosey are up to, and we've got some amazing content to release to really show you what's going on behind the scenes in our property development business, or maybe if you listen to our podcasts, we talk about how a lot of the time we don't really have all the resources in place right away, but what we do know is, we trust our ability to go out and make it happen. For example, this site in Cambridgeshire, we secured that, we got it under contract, not really knowing who was going to be funding it, exactly what the funding options were going to be, but we just knew, well, either way we're going to find a way, we'll find the investors. And obviously we did that in a responsible way. There's an irresponsible way to do that, just try and wing it, but we were educated, we were confident in ourselves, and there were so many excuses we could have made that, maybe we don't have this, we don't have that, even with Rosey's knowledge level and experience, but we just kind of found
there's a will, there's a way.
And there's a will, there's a way, and we've jumped through a lot of hoops. And
and I always think as well, I can always think of someone doing more than me who had less than me, in the sense they had less resources, but they're out here doing more, and I'm there like, almost annoys me because they've been able to do that. But I think any of you can probably think of that situation, someone who didn't have maybe much and has now got, plenty. And, it is that resourcefulness that, money can't buy. So let's have a look at some, strategies that you could look at. So first one is land sourcing and packaging. So this is our first two exit strategies. So if you have limited cash reserves, or particularly if you feel a bit overwhelmed about the concept of building out, or maybe raising the debt to build out, you can start by sourcing and packaging land deals to sell to secondary developers for a fee or for planning gain. This is a simple strategy that applies everything that we learn in workshops 1 and 2, so on Monday and Tuesday. You can take the sites that you've secured through planning and sell them on for a profit once you've created an uplift in value with the planning permission. So that's our planning gain. So this is going to be the assignable option exit strategy. So that's where you'd sign it on for a fee, or the back-to-back strategy where you sell it on for that increase in land value. And there you go. Here's just a diagram showing exactly that. So that's those two first key exit strategies. And this is, I think, another big light bulb moment a lot of people had, probably behind the capital stack, was that people didn't realise that there are actually strategies to make profit from property development without building out. And a lot of people do that, or you create that equity and you use it to help fund. But fundamentally, there are two key exit strategies that you can use to profit before even having to build out.
I think it's important we touched on this on workshop 1 when we sort of introduced you, Rosey. You worked as, I guess the title was a land agent for a couple of years, but a land agent is essentially the way you were doing it. You're just following exactly what you've taught, sourcing deals, packaging them, and then connecting them with other developers and generating
commissions for that. We used to charge 3% of the purchase price was the fee our company would charge at the time. 2 or 3% is really standard, because we didn't get the planning, we did essentially the first exit strategy. But yeah, we would charge a fee for doing that, and that's exactly what I did for, good three and a bit years probably. So smaller developments with your investors. So if you're in a situation where you have a small cash pot and are excited by the prospect of building out a site, you can start with smaller schemes of maybe sort of 1 to 5, maybe 1 to 7 houses. You can partner or joint venture with investors to assist with funding this project. So that's going to be raising the private equity like we spoke about in yesterday's workshop. And this is a great way to build experience for your development CV, which, looking forward to the future, is going to help you obtain more investment overall, as well as more favourable lending terms from the banks. So I was actually having a conversation with a student earlier on our standard Q&A, and I was sort of talking to them about this. This isn't short-term strategy. If you want to get into development, you're looking long-term. And the first deals you do, don't look at them as the be-all and end-all. Look at them as stepping stones to the future. So building up that experience by maybe doing joint ventures and things like that can be some of the most valuable deals you'll ever do. Maybe not in monetary terms, but in the extrinsic value they add elsewhere.
I just wanted to, just going back to the first bit about land sourcing, we've actually got Simon in the chat who's been through our training, and he just said he's closed 2 deals, which is good to hear by sourcing land. So we'd love to hear more about that, Simon, and congratulations on.
I was chatting to Simon today about that actually. So yeah, well done, Simon. That was the land sourcing masterclass, which obviously was a one-time offering that we did about deal sourcing. But yeah, Simon, well done. That's brilliant, and that's a really quick turnaround. So the larger developments. So if you have a sizable cash pot, have maybe already done 1 or 2 smaller developments, or have experience in construction yourself, you might have a construction company, you may wish to move on to larger projects of maybe 5, 10 plus units. You can continue to work with investors to help fund the project, and because of your experience to date and the fact you maybe have a bigger cash pot already, you will find it even easier to attract these investors. And really, all exit strategies are viable options to you. You've got all the choice, which is lovely. So you can consider building to rent for long-term cash flow and capital appreciation. Or you may wish to build a power team so you can deliver more projects at one time, so you can begin to scale up that business.
I just wanted to read something else again, something else out from the chat, and this is interesting. Just about touching on from what we spoke about yesterday about raising finance and how there's just not a lack of capital out there. There's so much money out there. John said, I was fitting blinds for a customer, which is my current business, and whilst doing so, I told the customer about my plans to develop sites. I was honest and told them I didn't have the money to buy a plot, but I understood how to do it once I secured a plot. Turned out they had 2 rental properties with nightmare tenants, so they were selling them and wanted to do something with the money, and asked if they could joint venture once the sales are completed. You never know who has the money. And so it just goes to show, once you're educated, once you know what you're doing, all you've got to do, you never know where the money is.
Yeah. That's the perfect example.
Someone mentioned it yesterday, I've been in a sauna before, having a chat, someone just asked me, what is it you do? And it came.
I remember, yeah.
And then also taxi driver once got talking, and he said, I've got some cash, what should I do with it? And so there's a lot of money out there, and I just wanted to read that out to sort of drill that point home.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant example. Hopefully something comes of it as well. So the journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 step. Let's talk the next steps. So you're at quite an interesting point in your journey. Is this just another day, or is this day 1? The choice is yours. So you don't have to have it all figured out yourself. You don't have to have the roadmap. At this point in the bootcamp, you have 2 options. Option 1, you go it alone. You spend thousands of pounds figuring it out for yourself and make some very expensive mistakes. Or option 2, you learn the proven system from someone that has mastered it and get it right the first time. So this is where I would like to introduce you all to Property Development Mastery. So this is obviously our training program, our core coaching and mentoring program. So what is it? It is lifetime access to recorded content explaining everything you need to know. It is step-by-step training spanning over 50 lessons covering the entire process from start to finish of property development. We have live weekly Q&A calls with myself where you can ask questions about the content itself to solidify your knowledge, or obviously as and when you get to the point of actually applying that and getting deals, that's where you come and ask for advice about maybe your next steps. So yes, perfect opportunity to ask questions and just generally get feedback. Also, really importantly, these calls ensure that you're held accountable to get results. So not just have this knowledge and then sit on it, but to actually implement it. And, you know, sometimes it is quite a long journey, and, you know, these Q&A calls can really help you stay inspired and keep pushing forward, maybe if you have a few setbacks. As well as access to a library of over 50 recorded calls with all the questions timestamped for you to easily find the relevant answers. So you can listen to all of our previous Q&A calls as well.
I just wanted to, sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to read out another comment from Peter, he's a student of Property Development Mastery, and if there are any other existing students in the chat, say hi. But Peter said a chap that I was working with mentioned that he was looking for investors who had £200,000. I suggested he raised his game, and when he did, he said he was looking for £500,000. The person next to him said that she had £500,000, and it's about the words that you use, and that's just a great example of, again, how much money is out there, and too many people, when you get that belief system in your head that, oh, there's no investors, there's no money out there, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. As soon as you start putting it out there that actually you're looking for cash, you never be surprised. So it's just another really good example. Yeah,
and I always like to say, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Someone will say, no, I don't have money. But they might say, but I do know someone that does. You know, like, what's the harm? What's the worst that could happen? We also have our private Slack community. So this is where you can get support and ask questions 24/7. So you can ask me direct questions in there, as well as being part of the community with all of our students. And you can network and find accountability partners. So actually, Peter, who just said that comment, has got a joint venture going on with Ingrid at the minute, who's another one of our students. So not only could you find accountability partners, but you could actually find joint venture partners. And, you know, we think it's really important that you're in a community of like-minded individuals on the same wavelength as you, trying to achieve the same things as you, you know, trying to do the same things as you, all on that journey together. It comes with all the contracts, templates, and cheat sheets you need. So that's over 100 documents in total provided with the training.
And that includes, well, like I was about to say, the appraisal templates, which a lot of people asked for, and there are multiple appraisal templates. You've got a more basic one, you've got one which is a bit more advanced, which pulls in cash flows from banks using an S-curve, which aligns with your drawdowns. So when you draw down throughout the construction, throughout the project, obviously it's not going to be linear, so the interest is then calculated based on that S-curve and how much you can be drawing down across, whether it's a 12-month, 18-month, 2 years, and then there's one for apartments as well.
Yeah, and obviously we teach you how to use those. We don't just give you them and let you figure it out. You're taught how to use all of those.
And another a lot of people have asked for is the Bcis costing calculator, which it's got all the data around what it's costing, price per square foot to build different types of schemes and units and house types around the country. Hundreds
of location factors. So that goes in hand in hand with our appraisals, because as good as our appraisal templates are, without the right information to go into them, again, they're worthless in essence. So the two of those goes hand in hand. Plus some more bonuses. So for the first 48 hours only, we're going to offer a site visit to our development sites. So come and take a tour of our Cambridgeshire development sites to see firsthand what goes into building a multi-million-pound development. Don't forget to bring your wellies. Don't be like me, the photo in the left, where I actually got my ankle cut on site that day, and I still have scars from it. But yeah, come and see the site, ask the questions, just see what happens day to day on a development site. All the exciting parts about that. Also, our first ever in-person live event. So join us at our offices in October for a day of networking and talks from myself and other industry experts. This is a great opportunity to form strong relationships with other members within our community. So our existing students, obviously meet me, meet the team, meet my team. It's certainly going to overall be a really good day and a day to remember.
Yeah, and this has been highly requested because actually when we first launched sort of the education program and this program and started building a community of students, it was actually the week before we went into lockdown.
The first lockdown
last year, and so we've not had an opportunity to meet any of the students. And Rosey was just saying earlier, and there's people like Peter, who's in the chat, who's on Q&As all the time, and
I've spoke to for so many hours yet never actually met in person.
So that's going to be a really great day, and just on the site visit as well, so anyone that obviously joins in the next 48 hours, we're going to invite you to come and look at the development sites, and it's just a really eye-opening experience. It gets you excited, and it's just a fun day out to see what's really going on a building site.
Yeah. So importantly, who is this program not for? So we sort of said this in the first workshop, but it's not for anyone wanting an overnight success, and it is not get rich quick. And to be honest, if you're looking for get rich quick, you probably haven't made it 4 days in, hour and a half each time. You probably lost interest. So hopefully none of you guys are here. It's not for those of you who aren't ready to do the work. So as we've mentioned, a lot of work goes into this. And it's definitely not for the yeah but folks. So the people that can always find an excuse for why something can't happen. This is you're Mr. Can't doesn't exist, aren't you?
You have to be so solution focused. It's countless times you come across problems. I'm sure you guys have experienced this in property, things going wrong, things not going to plan. There's always loads of excuses as to why it couldn't work, why it's not working, why you should just give up. But
it's finding that solution, or the yes amongst the sea of no's. Is so important, and to be able to have that resilience to keep that mindset is so important. But who is it for? So it's for those of you wanting to build a real business with a real strategy and get real results for years to come. It's for those that understand building a successful business requires hard work and consistently, but know that it will pay off in the long run. For those of you that are truly willing to go all in and do whatever it takes. And importantly, for those of you that see the importance of a coach or mentor and want to compress time by learning from someone else that has been immersed in the industry for years and years, made the mistakes, seen the mistakes, and is actually doing it every day. So I just want to recap on some of our fantastic students. So first of all, we've got Ollie and Chanel. So they're actually 22 and 23 at the time, but they were actually our first ever students on Property Development Mastery. And last year they secured a site that they're going to take through planning to build 14 houses. The gross development value of this project is just over £5.5 million. They actually want to build out. They've got some property experience already, and with the equity that they've created in this deal by adding the value at the planning stage, they'll be able to utilise this to work with investors and bank funding to fund this project. We've got Harry again. So Harry is only 23, building 23 houses in Wales, and this deal had a 7-figure profit margin, which meant he's actually in talks now with mains contractors to deliver the site, turnkey solution for him on a site with a gross development value of just over £4 million. And Harry's actually a great example of just, asking for investors. I believe he said he asked one of his professional team, who put him in contact with someone else, who put him in contact with who is ultimately his investor. If you watch the YouTube video, you'll see him talk about it, and it really is. And he actually spoke about how sometimes you're scared to ask, and he just wish he asked sooner. But yeah, fantastic example of what a good margin deal does for you. And then Peter and Ingrid, who they just the other day collected the keys to a hotel, which they're going to convert to 27 apartments, and then hopefully build another 12 apartments to the rear of the existing hotel. Now, their model is actually to retain sort of as service accommodation, which is like your Airbnb, short-term let type model, and they hope to generate nearly £750,000 of income a year from that, which is amazing. And like I mentioned before, these are actually two of our existing students doing a joint venture together.
And interestingly, they use vendor financing on this one, which is quite a unique method of financing, not something we discussed. So, but that YouTube interview is private at the minute. We'll make that public over the next couple of days and share it with you guys as well.
Yeah. So, just some amazing words from our students. Just saying, some of them saying the benefits of having access to us and the ongoing support that we provide. Really long one there from Sam, which is amazing. If you're seriously looking to be a successful property developer, then by all means, I'd say it's 110% worth the investment in yourself, which is lovely to hear. It's so in-depth and step-by-step shows you how to be the best property developer you can be. Personally, I'm glad I'm decided to do this course from Callum. I 100% recommend this course. This course is fantastic, very well constructed, extremely clear, and gives you a lot of behind-the-curtain type info. But yeah, we've got many Trustpilot reviews, which is lovely. Thank you very much. So what could this be worth to you? If you fully committed to this, did the work and went all in, how much profit do you think you could conservatively make in the next 5 to 10 years? Don't have to put it in the chat or say it, just, think of a figure in your head, a couple of 100,000, a couple of a million.
Tens of millions. There is no right or wrong answer really, but this was a question that was asked to me a few years ago as well, and it's just interesting. If you think very conservatively, if you just sort of followed the process, what sort of number do you have in mind in the next 5 to 10 years? Just to put into perspective what this could be worth.
So, just to recap, Property Development Mastery, online portal with extensive step-by-step training, weekly live coaching calls with myself, access to our Slack community for 24/7 support from myself and the team and the rest of our students, contracts and supporting documents, over 100 of them, library of 50 plus hours worth of previous Q&As, so you've got lots of questions previously answered, as well as discounts on softwares like Nimbus Maps. So what is the investment to get enrolled in the program? It is 3 lots of 1,995, or if you pay in full, it is a payment of 4,995 plus VAT.
And that's three monthly payments of 1,995, just to clarify.
So, cart is open, and if you go to newmanrose.co.uk/join, you have the ability to get enrolled, and Tyler will post that in the chat for you guys. And then something I know that all of you have been eagerly anticipating. Who has won the Ultimate Property Development Prize? Drum roll, please. Connor Clark. So there you go, there's Connor's do the work light bulb moment. I think he actually posted several in there, so we got a few bonus entries, but well done, Connor. If you want to message the team on social media or something, we will get you set up with a login, and obviously we'll arrange our one-on-one call, so well done.
I'm not sure if it was your brother either that might have been sharing on Instagram. I noticed there was another clerk sharing on Instagram, but yeah, might be. If not, there's a coincidence. But well done, Connor. That's amazing.
And this was randomly selected, because I think if we had to manually pick out who the most engaged, it would have been a nightmare. So
yeah,
well done to everyone that.
We just popped it into the and they put all the names into a generator, and Connor was the lucky one. So another little bonus. So the first 10 of you to join today will get a one-on-one coaching strategy session with myself. So we'll sit there for an hour just going through where you are now, your options, a little bit of everything. But yeah, really just to get you sort of kick-started in your development journey. And for any of you that purchase before the end of today's call, you are welcome to join us at our offices for an afternoon mastermind session to plan and map out your strategy for the next 12 to 24 months. This is only going to be available for those of you who purchase before the end of today's live stream. So this will be a session prior to the in-person networking event, be a lunch, all sit and discuss your strategies for the next 12 to 24 months.
So I think now we'll just open the floor to questions, give you guys an opportunity to go over to the site. I've dropped the link in the chat as well. I'll post it in a couple of times so you can click on it. And yeah, so anyone that joins while we're on the live stream, we're going to stick on for another hour and answer all of your questions. And if anyone joins within the hour, we're going to be inviting you to our office for a mastermind session and plan out the rest of your journey.
But yeah, any questions for me?
Let me pull up the questions. Christian asked how many students have gone through the program over the last 18 months, 2 years. It's about a couple hundred that we've enrolled.
Yeah.
Jeff asked, how do you go about cost overruns?
So if you do have cost overruns, normally you find that within a construction project, you'll overrun costs in some sectors and save them in others. But let's say just overall, you completely overrun the budget. First of all, that's where if you've got the site with the right margins, it becomes super valuable, because to then turn around to the bank and say, look, costs are overrunning, what can we do about our loan facility? First and foremost, the banks, would try and work with you as a first defense, I guess, to a cost overrun, but they will find it harder to justify lending more if from day one the margins were squeezed. If, as we discussed, we have that site that has the good margins, all of a sudden that isn't as risky for them. When they're looking at their options, basically you're saying, I don't have enough money to finish this project. They're thinking, well, we get our money out by them finishing the project. They have a few options. Either we fund more or we take the site off of them. If you've got that deal with the great margins, that's when they'll actually think, you know what, in this situation, it's going to be easier to fund more. They might want, one of their sort of project managers to step in so that they're a bit more involved in the deal. But yeah, that's where coming back to that right deal day one, again, fundamental. Or, you could top up the amount needed with private investors for a profit share. But if you don't have the margin to give away, in the first instance, you're going to struggle to claw it back.
So congratulations to Darren that has joined. Great to have you on, Darren.
Congrats, Darren. Look forward to seeing you for our one-to-one session.
And Benjamin Cook as well.
Benjamin, yeah. You're welcome to come either into the offices or we can do it over Zoom, whichever works for you. But it'd be nice to meet some of you in person.
We just want to talk about our money back guarantee as well.
Yeah, so obviously we just opened the floor, but we strongly believe in this. So if you join this program and at any point in the next 30 days you don't feel like this training is for you, simply send us a message and we will honour you a full refund. We want to make this decision 100% risk-free for you.
So we're not asking you to actually decide yes or no today. We're asking you to make a fully informed decision, and that is all. The only way you can make the fully informed decision is really from the inside. At the minute, you're on the outside of the program. So you get to join this program today and see if everything we say is true and it's truly valuable to you. Then if it is, you can decide to stay on the inside. Whether that's in 29 minutes or 29 days from now, if you're not happy, we're not happy. If for any reason whatsoever you would like your money back, you can get it. Because we only want students on our program that are happy. All you have to do is email support@newmanrose.co.uk and we will issue you a full refund in under 24 hours. So obviously we've given you a lot over these last 4 days, and hopefully enough to first of all help you decide, is development for me? Some of you will probably come away from this thinking, not for me, but at least you've explored the option. Some of you think absolutely yes, all for me, and in which case, hopefully you've got an understanding of our knowledge, the way we teach, and you're loving it, and that's only going to be solidified with actually enrolling in the program and seeing the training and attending the Q&As. But like we say, if at any point in the next 30 days you decide that isn't the case, we will offer a full money back guarantee. And we can only make this guarantee because we are so confident this training is the real deal and has all the resources you need to succeed in property development. So again, just some of our Trustpilot reviews. Filling the screen. So just to remind you, Property Development Mastery, online portal with extensive step-by-step training, weekly live coaching and Q&A calls, access to our Slack community, contracts and supporting documents, over 50 hours worth of previous Q&A calls, as well as discounts on software. So you've got the option of either 3 monthly payments of $1,995 or to pay in full for $4,995.
So let's run through a couple more questions. Who oversees the quality assurance on the construction site?
So you've got a few options for that. So my recommendation is if you are delivering with the mains contractor, you will have what's called an employer's agent who will sort of administer the contracts, as well as doing the weekly site checks, doing the QS sign-off. So they will first and foremost do that, as well as yourself. And we have, within the program, we actually have a quality sign-off procedure, which basically means that you agree between yourself and the team. To be fair, even on a subcontract approach, particularly on a subcontract approach, you'd need to employ this. But essentially what that means is before you can progress, or before the team, the contractor, whoever can progress to the next stage, you have to have sign-off from either yourself or an appointed professional if you think someone else would be better at checking the quality if you're maybe less experienced. Basically, that without that sign-off, they can't proceed, which means that at each stage you're checking quality so that you don't get too far along before realising, oh, that was really shoddy, we need to rectify it. But to now rectify would be massively expensive. So there's sort of protocols in place, as well as working with professionals to ensure that.
Cool. Other questions, can we talk about crowdfunding? So do you want to explain what it is and how it can be used? Yeah, so crowdfunding is a form of funding, essentially, whereby it can be public or a private raise. Public raises are the ones that most people are aware of, which is basically a deal will be uploaded to a crowdfunding platform, and importantly, due to the compliance nature that we spoke about yesterday, it has to be an FCA, a financial conduct regulated body that's going to do the raise on your behalf, and essentially, individuals from the public, from your network, from wherever, can decide to invest in this deal, and you can set your minimum raise or your minimum investment. So some people have a minimum investment of £100, £1,000, £10,000,
And essentially from a group of people, you will raise the desired amount for the set need, and it will be clear from the outset what that money is being used for. So it could be for the planning application, for the site purchase, site funding, for all sorts, but you could use crowdfunding essentially to raise, importantly, that equity piece needed in funding a deal. Or you could do a private crowdfund, which is basically where you have your investors already committed to give you the funds, but you just need to facilitate that in the correct way by the FCA regulations, and you do it via a private raise with a crowdfund company, because obviously they are FCA regulated.
Cool. I've got a couple of questions about the Q&A calls.
Yeah.
So how often are they? How long do they last? And how long do they get them for?
So it's lifetime access because, importantly, as I've sort of mentioned, this isn't an overnight thing. You're going to need support ongoing. They're weekly for an hour each time. And what we find is not all, I don't think I've ever had every single student on at one. Normally there's sort of a handful of people on there. They, attend as and when they need to ask questions. And yeah, you get, we chat and discuss it. Unlike this, where it's one-sided, you'll put your question in the box, and then I'll unmute you, and we'll just discuss it really, sort of back and forth for a little while. And yeah, you can ask me anything.
Okay. Somebody asked, I'm based in Scotland, which Nimbus doesn't work in Scotland. Will I still get value from the program?
So it will be obviously slightly different in the sense that we did find a mapping software that worked in Scotland.
Well, we have got students in Scotland.
We've got students in Scotland, I know that, doing deals, but there is I can't think, it'll come to me. There is a mapping software you can use in Scotland. It's not Nimbus, it's another one. And yeah, it still applies a lot of the same principles. There's some slight planning variations. And to be honest, one update will probably look to roll out. One thing to mention is this is a constantly updating program. We add content all the time. We will probably look to roll out like a Scotland chapter, which just addresses the slight intricacy changes within Scotland. But yeah, it's completely applicable. And, a lot of things, you can do a lot of deals in England. You don't have to do them in Scotland. There's deals you could do without ever having to visit a site.
Chris asked, so great content guys, really appreciate the time and effort into Bootcamp. How many students were complete beginners before they went through the program, and is working full-time whilst taking the program realistic? Thanks again. So it looks like there's a lot of sort of beginners in here, so they're sort of asking. Yeah,
so complete beginners. Harry was a complete beginner. And it was, like I say, he's now doing. I think he was at uni when he decided he wanted to get into property, and decided to go through this step. But yeah, I'd say it's probably maybe 50-50 beginners and more experienced people. And it's completely achievable for beginners. You might just have to start smaller and build yourself up. Like I say, doing those smaller deals and working up to the bigger deals. But it's a long-term approach. We're looking at something to do for years to come. And actually, I'd say probably 90% of our students work full-time and do this around a full-time job. And one thing I don't think that's actually been mentioned is the online training is lifetime access. So we've sort of given you a whistle-stop tour of some of the key components of development here, but I can't teach it you in 4 days. I can't teach it you in a week. This is why we don't really do in-person training for learning from scratch, because to be honest, my voice would never last, and you couldn't take it all in. If I did a week intensive program, you couldn't take it all in a week. It's learn at your pace. It is broken up into like 10 weeks, but you don't have to do it in 10 weeks, because exactly that, a lot of people are working, they have lives, things happen, things come up, they might need to drop it, pick it up. And that's why we decided to do online lifetime access for that reason. It's such a big topic that you need the time to fit it around your lifestyle. So yeah, 90% of our students are working full time, but at some point we hope, and the goal is that they'll actually transition into
being full-time developers if that's their goal.
Someone mentioned, and this is a good point, it's Searchland that works in Scotland.
Searchland, that's it. One of our students found that software actually.
So Searchland does work in Scotland, and then the same principles apply.
Yeah.
Let's have... Rima asks, so how do people that crowdfund your deals get their money back? So I think she's asking the investors that invest on the crowdfunding platforms, how do they get paid back?
Yeah, so that's a situation where once you actually do the crowdfund, they'll create what's called the Shareholders Agreement, and basically what you can view it as is their money goes to buy shares in our company, or the company delivering the project, and then they'll get a profit share typically at the back end of the deal, and that's facilitated by essentially them selling the shares back to us, and we pay them back in their allocated profit amount. It's normally done that way.
How do you value a site pre and post planning to work out the uplift in value?
Yeah, so post planning, that's done with your appraisal. So you do your appraisal and you keep changing that land value until you hit that 23% pre-finance margin, and that's typically seen as like the open market value for that site. Between 20 and 23%, my personal preference is to sit on the higher end of that at 23. That's deemed as the open market value of that site with planning. To get the value as it stands, it depends. So if it's a house, for example, you might be able to value that yourself by, doing your comparable research. If not, if it's, let's say, a commercial asset or just some land, that's where speaking to agents really comes in. Just give them a call, sort of explain the situation, explain the piece of land. And normally most agents will give you at least a good enough ballpark to work from. And if you needed to formally value it, that's where you'd get what's called a red book valuation.
Cool. Gerard asked, do you have examples of students creating joint ventures and working together on property development? I guess one of the best examples is the one we discussed.
Peter and Ingrid, so they're literally just purchased that hotel for the hotel and the units behind it. There'll be 39 apartments in total, which they intend to retain rather than sell. But yeah, they're two students doing a joint venture.
Cool. Some other questions. Keep the questions coming, guys. What is your fees for project management?
So what we put into our appraisal for what we charge the deal. When we're doing it, depends if we've got a mains or a subcontractor. If it's subcontracted, I want at least 4%. If it's mains, I would drop that to as low as sort of 2 if it meant being able to afford a mains contractor, because there is less direct management from us. But additional to the project management fee, which is our fee, we also have an allowance for the employer's agent fee, which is another layer of project management aside from ourselves.
Yeah, Callum also asked, can you tell me more about the development site visits? So just want to reiterate the bonuses that are available.
Yeah, so we're happy for anyone that purchases in the next 48 hours to come and visit our site in Cambridge, where basically we'll just spend the day there, have a look around, obviously any questions, ask away. So it's sort of a coaching session with me as well, I guess, in that sense. But yeah, just come and see the site, see what happens on a development site, ask any questions, just get to know it really. A lot of people ask for this to actually come to a live project. So yeah, we'll take you to one of our projects. And then, if you purchase over what we're calling our car open period, you're welcome to come and attend what is our first in-person event, which is just going to be a networking event at our office. here in the Midlands, where we're going to have some great guest speakers. I'll be there doing a Q&A, just generally a really good networking event. A lot of our existing students will be attending, so you can meet obviously a lot of like-minded people, accountability partners and potential joint venture partners. And then for anyone that buys before the end of this call, so we'll sit and do these questions for as long as questions keep coming. If you purchase prior to the end of this call, then we'd love for you to come and attend a VIP lunch and mastermind session with ourselves at our offices, which will just be an afternoon session to plan and map out your strategy for the next sort of 12, 24 months, and just ask those sort of more in-depth questions and, sort of strategize with ourselves and, like I say, other like-minded people.
Cool. Niraj asked, do you need to be certified or hold a license for property development before we approach banks for the loan?
No, you don't have to be sort of registered or certified. The only thing that you would have to be for is if you were doing those collective investment schemes, which is raising equity from multiple investors. It's just a compliance thing, and basically the way around that is you just have to do it via a crowdfund platform like we spoke about. But no, you don't have to be regulated to sort of be involved in the industry or normal bank lending.
Do you think profit is reduced on new builds because now they have to have an EV charger?
No, EV chargers, to be honest, if you work with the right consultants on sort of the green energies, most of them will have suppliers that will fit them for free just to be able to sort of have the ongoing, they sort of charge, my understanding of it, the providers of the EV points will charge something to do with the technology means they're actually able to sell some money back to the grid in a way that the client doesn't even notice, the homeowner doesn't even notice, doesn't affect their bill, but something to do with their technology means they can actually sell some energy back to the grid. So sometimes you can have them put into your sites for free.
Cool. Somebody asked, if we join or buy at a later time, do we still get the same monthly price? So I just want to reiterate obviously how long this bonus is available for.
So the bonuses, the VIP lunch is to the end of this call. The site visit is for the next 48 hours. And the in-person networking event is until, am I saying the 26th?
It's the end of October. Yeah, we'll confirm the date.
Yeah.
And let everybody know.
But then we'll probably close enrolments for a period of time after that, just to ensure, obviously, all the new students get onboarded correctly and get the support they need. But then beyond that, the price will remain the same.
So the price, so you can get in at this price for the next few days, and then we're closing enrolments for a period of time, welcoming everyone into the group. So what we don't want to do is have a huge influx of people enrolling and then not be able to support everyone. And then when we do open the doors again in the future, because we're releasing, this is release of version 2 program as well, the price will be increased. We haven't set that price, but right now our focus is enrolling this new group of students, get them all settled, get them all onboarded. A few people have asked, do we have any other instalment payment options? Right now, no, but if you send us a message privately on social media, we can see if there's any possible way we can make this work for you. So drop us a message privately on social media, but and we'll get that, see if we can get something sorted. Have we ever used service accommodation as an exit strategy for any of our developments? And I think Bolden also asked, when considering service accommodation as an exit plan, is it recommended to have worked closely with an experienced SA operator who will also be taking over the management after the project is delivered? We'd probably recommend, we've never, well, I don't think, have you ever done SA? I've never.
No, I've never exited any deals onto SA, service accommodation, but a bit like sort of said there, if that was something you did choose to do, my recommendation would be, unless you yourself are a very experienced service accommodation provider already, and you're sort of migrating into development to service back into that model, my recommendation would be you have sort of what I'd call like an end user in place to either manage it for you, or they're sort of renting it off of you to then sublet themselves. But my recommendation wouldn't be to both get into property development for the first time and serviced accommodation for the first time if it's not something that you've maybe done before.
Gerard asked, how many of your students become full-time property developers? Well, it varies. Some are still at the start of their journey, still learning. Some are still finding their sites.
So like the likes of Harry, Ollie and Chanel, they've have been fortunate enough to just commit to it full time. Whereas we've got some students who actually don't ever intend to build out. They just want to deal source sort of on the sides of their normal jobs. I believe we've got Daryl, who's a student that's
just secured an option agreement.
Gone on to do it full time. Doug, he's a member of our Q&As quite regularly. He's got a few units on the go. Leon, he's got some as well. Obviously Peter and Ingrid, but they were in property already.
The answer is lots. But as well, there's people from all different backgrounds who've got complete newbies starting the property development journey. A lot of people from the construction side of things that have experience in construction but not in raising finance or finding deals. Mike asked, if you sign up, how long do you get the calls, the live Q&A calls and coaching calls for?
Lifetime. We're there to support you.
Mm-hmm. And they're every week. In fact, right now for the next couple of months, the next few months, they're going to be twice a week, just to manage the influx of new students as well. So twice a week access to Rosey.
Yep.
Next questions. Have you ever seen equity being insured by an insurance bond? Oh, and also shout out to Shakti, who just enrolled as well. So
congrats.
Congratulations, Shakti. Welcome.
Look forward to the one-on-one session. Sorry, what was the previous question?
Have you ever seen equity being insured by an insurance bond?
I've seen bonds used, whether or not it was on an equity basis. I'm trying to think how the deal was structured as to whether or not it would have been. It went in as a bond. I suppose the money made up within that bond was equity. So whether or not you would say that was the equity insured by a bond, the bond facilitated the funding. Kind of, I guess, is the answer to that question.
Does the program offer free access to Bcis?
You don't get access to Bcis itself. That's a separate website, but all of the costing information comes from Bcis. So, the costing calculator is something that you guys get access to, which is where we get all the data from there.
Someone asked, with affordable sites, how is the sales price of the affordable units affected? I guess maybe you're also asking how they calculated.
Yeah, so you can have two things here. You can have a fully affordable site, and to be honest, that's normally sold on a different strategy to sort of one of the ones we spoke about today. We actually discuss it in some of the advanced strategies lessons in the program. It's called Forward Fund. So basically you sell it to the housing association from the start and they pay you to deliver it. And they will sort of negotiate that deal. It's normally in areas where you're struggling to make the margins work because the resales values are quite low. So they sort of pay roughly market value, but the market value is very low, which is why in that situation it works. That's for the whole site being affordable. If it's a situation where it's the affordable units on a generally open market site, so maybe like the 25% contribution, it's going to depend. So if it's social rented, typically developers either put it in at cost, i.e. whatever it costs to build, they put it in the GDV at that, so it makes no profit, or sometimes people put it in at sort of like 50% open market value. Whether or not that makes a profit is another question. I know some developers that just put a 10% markup on the cost as the resale value for social rented. And then if it's some sort of shared ownership, it depends on the shared ownership structure. Sometimes that can be as high as 80% of market value. So you'd have to figure out what would that unit be worth as open market, and then work back to what 80% of that would be.
Cool. Martin asked, how often do you see 100% funded deals by a combination of debt and equity for developers with some experience of, say, 1 to 2 sites?
Providing obviously the deal's correct.
Well, there's always going to be equity, whether that can be cash input from yourself, that will be from, could be from investors as well, pooling the resources with them. Obviously, some of that can be equity you've created in the deal.
Yeah, I'd say I know quite a lot of developers. So one thing I would say is traditional banks very rarely would want to fund 100% of the cost, regardless of the equity created in the deal, just because it's sort of like a bank policy to not do that. I know a lot of developers who, and this is what Cassidy Group do, for example, my family business, because of the equity created in the land, we have private investors who will act as the bank, charging bank rates, and will fund 100%. Or, like Tyler says, the equity will be there that's been created, whereby you could then, that's your injection, the equity you created in the deal and the money you invested into the planning, that you could then combine senior debt from the banks as well as equity from investors to fund the other percent.
Somebody said, I missed yesterday's session, how long will it be online? So the Q&A recordings will be online until Sunday evening. So you've got the next sort of 3 days to binge watch and catch up on any recordings. Adam asked, can we purchase individual particulars, for example, the spreadsheets? It is just one package. We don't want to itemize it and sell them separately. And the reality is, you need the training to go alongside all the documents as well. Neeraj asked, if a property deal goes wrong, you can end up in a lot of debt. What's your worst deal and how much have you lost? Never lost money, but it's important. It's good to talk about contingency plans and what you can do if things go wrong. So when you build out the site and then you go to sell it, sometimes you may not be getting the sales values you want. So then there's an option to refinance the end units, rent them out. That cash flow can then service whatever outstanding debt is against that asset, and then once you hit what's called a trigger price, so when the market moves back up again and you get that trigger price, the houses are worth that price you want, you can then sell them and clear the debts. And then that's sort of plan B. Plan C, you can get to the sort of point where you're doing essentially a flash. You could sell the units back to any investors or do a flash sale, those sort of things. So that's one thing to talk about is contingencies. But again, if you follow the process and do everything right from the start, hopefully you're not in that position. And
the one thing to mention is, we spoke about these margins, so just to sort of actualise that a bit. So let's just say you had a deal that was, let's just go with the 23%, so just the viability threshold for a lot of banks. What that means is there is 23% profit in that deal. So, let's just say that 23% represented £1 million profit. So what that means is, there is £1 million in that deal left over. So let's say you get right to the end and the market crashes. You could take £1 million off that GDV and break even. You won't make a penny other than maybe your project management fee, but the bank would get paid back and you walk away. So, there is that, obviously you never want to get to that situation, but that is the truth, is that you could get to the end of the deal and just say, bank, have it all, have it back, you make the profit, I'm out. Or you sell them heavily discounted, and just walk away from it. So that there is that profit margin is also a buffer, if that makes sense. Yes, it's profit, but
it is also buffer.
Rima asked, how do we access the online recordings of the Q&A sessions? So Rima, if you're referring to the Q&A sessions in the content portal, on version 2, which we've released tonight, we'll start to migrate our existing students over to, the recordings are going to be migrated over the next 24 hours, but we can obviously give you access as well if you drop us an email with the support email address. We can get that sorted for you. And you also asked which is the best social media platform to contact us on, Facebook or Instagram. Best is via the support email, because that's what we prioritise. We don't always see or get back to all the Instagram messages because there are so many. But either Instagram or the Facebook group we'll look through, but if it's important and urgent, the best is the support email address.
It's your support@newmanrose.co.uk.
Matt said house prices seem to have gone up a lot in the last 12 months. Where do you see this going in the next 12 months? Will there be a crash? How will this affect your sites?
Tyler, do you want to take away with that one?
Well, it's always crystal ball and impossible to predict. Do we think there's a crash? Personally, no. How will it affect your sites? Well, truthfully, if house prices go up, we're going to be positively affected. If house prices go down, it is going to damage our end sales values. But we've got the margins there where we're not too worried about that, and it'd have to dip quite a bit in order to affect us. And then, just like we talked about a second ago, there's either different contingency plans as well in case
the worst happens.
The worst happens, and it gets to the point where we can't sort of hit the trigger prices we want.
One thing we always teach, don't we, in the programme is, when I do the appraisal lessons and I talk about it and I talk about doing your comparable research, it's a single hope value. So many people, so many developers will appraise, and the numbers they'll put in for the sales are projected numbers in 12 months' time. They go, oh, well, the market goes up by 3% a year, so we'll put 3% on. And hey, the market might go up by 3%, might go up by 10%, but you have to price on what you can prove today, in my opinion. So what does the comparable data tell you right now? And even then, be very conservative with that. We'd rather slightly undervalue, and we're looking at our current site in Cambridge and thinking, actually, the market's telling us we're probably, on average, 25 grand priced below what the market's currently saying in our appraisal. But we'd much rather be in that position, know the numbers work, from a conservative estimate. If on the back end they resell for much higher, fantastic. That's just profit we hadn't allowed for. That happy days. But you don't want to be in a situation where you've got this inflated GDV in your appraisal based on hope value of the market going up, and then maybe just the market stays the exact same and you're not where you need to be. So that's something we really hammer home to our students, is no hope value.
Ali asks, how do you approach the lender to ask for money if the tender result comes back higher than you or lender's expectations due to the current market situation? I just want to remind everyone as well, those that want to join while we're on this live call, as you can see on the screen, you get the bonus of the invite to sort of a VIP lunch and mastermind session with us. And then there's also the bonus for the first 10 people to join, get a private one-on-one, hour-long business planning and coaching session at any point, whether you want to do that straight away or as you've been through some of the program. But there's only a few spaces left of that now as well. So if you head over to the link, and you can get enrolled. So sorry, back to the original question. How do you approach a lender after the tenders come back slightly higher?
Yeah, so if the tenders came back slightly higher, my first point of call is cost engineering. So where can we shave some money? So you'd be working with your professional team, your architects, engineers, and the contractor themselves to really start screwing down on price. Where can we, I don't want to say cut corners, because that sounds like you're going to deliver something poor quality. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Just a well-designed scheme can save hundreds of thousands just with a well-designed scheme. So that'd be the first point of call, is actually, can we bring that tender back down? But if it's a situation where you haven't actually bought the site yet and you go into lending but you're under contract at a certain price, and you, for whatever reason, tenders come in far higher than expected,
I assume when you say tender, you mean a mains contract, and you've done a mains contract tendering. You could look at subcontracting it because a lot of people say that comes out cheaper. So that could be one route. But if not, that would be before you actually purchase it. You'd be, if the viability didn't work anymore, you'd be looking at renegotiating the purchase price. If the numbers didn't work at the right margins, the sort of only other option you'd have if you wanted to still proceed with the deal at that tender price, at that purchase price, and the GDV wasn't going up, you'd have to put a lot more of the money into the deal yourself or from equity partners to basically bring down the bank's risk for them to consider lending. You'd have to be going to a specialist tier 2 lender that would still entertain that deal.
Cool. Good answer. Ricky asked, good morning team, must be in Australia. Sorry, I've just joined the party. How many weeks of live coaching? So if you're referring to the live coaching and Q&A calls, that is indefinitely. Once you're in the program, you're in. We're here to support you. We're well aware that development is a long-term play, so we want to support you through the entire thing.
Yeah.
Rima asked, and this is a good question, about the 2 lockdowns. Did you lose any money during the 2 lockdowns on sites that work had to stop on, especially during the first lockdown when no work at all was allowed?
Yeah, so this was an interesting one. I actually remember discussing this in a Q&A at the time, because obviously the first lockdown rules came out, and it was it was actually a bit ambiguous what they said. It was if you can work at home, work from home, and at the time we had a few sites on Cassidy Group did. I was still actually back then working with the family business, and we sort of had this discussion of, well, what does if you can work a bricklayer can't work at home, a carpenter can't work at home, and so we closed the site for a few days, sort of digested it, and we were in a fortunate position that the sites we were delivering, from a subcontract perspective, we could spread the gangs out so that everyone had their own house to work on. So it was COVID friendly. We obviously insisted on other COVID rules. So we made the decision to actually continue our sites because, those lads are self-employed, and it was something we were very passionate about actually. We couldn't just cash flow them. We had to draw down money from the bank to pay their wages. And they had to work to get that drawdown. So we continued sites, so we didn't on that lose money. Well, we did in the sense that it wasn't delivered as efficiently. It didn't lose money, but it did cost us more. Still profit in the deal. On the bigger sites that had a mains contractor, the mains contractors pulled off for maybe a week or two, but then again came to the same conclusion that the guidelines were if you can work at home, and they couldn't. A lot of people saw people like Taylor Wimpey and your big house builders closing down, thinking, oh, that's good that, because of COVID and everything. And I always remember saying they're not closing down because they're closing the site. These big house builders close, we've worked for them as contractors, they close a site with 24 hours notice because if their sale, because they've got such close margins, if their sales rates aren't right, they will close a site so they don't have things sat, finished, built, waiting to be sold. And it was the sales rates that were affected by COVID that caused them to close, not the legislation. And everyone thought they were these do-gooders for closing site, and they weren't. They were putting good people out of work because the sales rates weren't going. I was quite passionate about that one. But yeah, no, to answer that question, we didn't lose money. Cost more, didn't lose money.
Matt asked, how much is the difference in costs in using a main contractor compared to a subcontractor?
In raw costs, there's intangible costs in the form of time. But in raw costs, typically you can look at something, providing you're able to effectively manage a subcontract scheme, because if you can't effectively manage it, you will have costs, indirect costs, if that makes sense, in the form of having to rush material orders because you haven't order scheduled correctly, or having to pay more to get gangs back to site when you've messed up the times that they need to start on site and things like that. But assuming you don't have those issues with subcontracting and it all goes smooth sailing, typically it's about a 20% difference, because basically with a mains contractor, you're paying for the mains contractor's profit and the subcontractors that they then tender to's profit. although there's a bit of a cost saving in the fact that mains contractors will get materials cheaper than you normally. But yeah, normally it's about 20%. But my argument is, there's the opportunity cost of your time with a subcontract one, which costs you more in the long run.
Cool. Rima asked, what tips do you have for sourcing a mains contractor?
They're busy, mains contractors are, so don't expect them to even respond to a tender request or give you a worthwhile response if you don't send them a very detailed tender pack. So that needs to be detailed working drawings, sometimes your own cost plan, and even go as far as a bill of quantities for them to then measure off from. I was actually just having this conversation today with a contractor who said one thing they can't get hold of. He says, I've got a list of over 3,000 people in my phone, but I can't think of a single one of them that can replace the estimator I've just had leave the business. And that estimators are the ones that will put the tender together. And basically, unless you give a bill of quantities and a cost plan and detailed drawings, they have to do that, which can take weeks. Whereas if you provide all of that, they can give you a response in hours. So it's that detailed tender pack will get you the decent responses, which cost money to get to, but if you want the good responses and a lot of responses, you need to do it.
And what about auditing sort of their accounts or seeing what other contracts they're in?
Yeah, so with the main, I've made mains contractors sound like the most glorious thing on earth, I think, with this bootcamp. And I love a mains contractor, but the risk you have with a mains contractor is exposure from other people's deals. So with a mains contract, you're going to be in a fixed price, is the beauty of it. I don't think I mentioned that, actually. These are the squeakiest chairs on earth. You have a fixed price, so you'll enter into that contract to deliver that scheme for, let's say, £3 million, which is fantastic. The risk is, with a mains contractor, that they have entered into a contract elsewhere with someone else, completely separate to your project, but they entered it at the wrong price, and now, basically, it's going to cost them more than the contract's worth to deliver, so then they could go bankrupt over a deal which is completely unrelated to yourself. Actually, Casti Group had this happen with a contract on an affordable site. They got bankrupt from a deal elsewhere, and it meant that they couldn't finish our scheme. Luckily, we were able to salvage it, but it's not nice to happen. And yeah, so basically you do have risk from other people's deals, so you just need to have an employer's agent work with you to basically analyse how exposed that contractor is from other deals. And normally banks like to see the mains contractor you use have a turnover of about 3 times the contract value. So if it's a contract for 3 million, they would like a mains contractor with, sort of a annual turnover of sort of north of £9 million.
Just wanted to shout out a message from Martin, who's also an existing student from the programme. He said, thank you guys for the additional training. Hopefully we'll be in touch soon to let you know how we're getting on with a site that we have going through at the moment. Fingers crossed, another week or so and we'll get sorted with investors.
Amazing.
So congratulations, Martin. There's another great case study there. Just to let you know, guys, we'll be wrapping up soon. So if you wanted to take advantage of the bonus on the screen, anyone that enrolls while we're live, we can get that sorted for you. Sina asked, will the use of different types of contracts be taught in the course? JCT, NEC, FIDIC?
Yes, we'll talk about things, so JCT contracts, things like that. There are contracts with our mains contractors, any contractors. So yeah, we talk through all our different contracts. We don't actually provide a template JCT simply because they have to be so sort of specialised. But yeah, we talk through all of that. We also talk through the different purchase contracts. Obviously, we spoke about option agreements here, but we do also talk about things like our conditional contracts and unconditional purchase contracts and promotion agreements, which are a few other options you guys have, which we explore in detail in the programme as well, not just options.
Rima asked, would you pay an estimator yourself to put a detailed tender together for you to provide to mains contractors?
Yeah, so your employer's agent normally is a QS, so they will do that for you, put together detailed tender pack, and sometimes you'd go as far as to do what's called a bill of quantities, which breaks down basically the quantities of everything on site.
And Jack asked, would you put in a penalty clause for mains contractors?
Yep, so you have LADs, which is your basically something you can claim on if the site's delivered late. So yeah, there's penalties in place, and it's to your discretion as to whether or not obviously you choose to implement them at the time.
Okay. An interesting one from Martin. One of my customers has been offered 100% development finance using SBLC, a standby letter of credit, or a BG, which is bank guarantee. Have you ever heard of it or used it?
So the only time I have come across that is when you're bringing an unencumbered site to the deal, to the table. So that means you own the land already without any debt on it. So really, it's kind of not 100% development. It is 100% cost of your remaining cost, but most banks will cover 100% construction cost. They just won't also cover 100% of land purchase. So the only time I've come across it is with unencumbered land. So you're already bringing something to the table where a lot of the cost has already been expended or didn't need to be covered. Maybe you've owned the land for many years. It's the only time I've come across it. So it's somewhat misleading in the way it's said as 100% of cost, but it's only 100% of construction cost, not purchase cost.
Cool. Just want to reiterate as well, I've seen a couple of questions around money back guarantee. There's a 30-day no risk money back guarantee for anyone that wants to enroll as well. Rima asks, how do you solve that problem of contractors going bankrupt and not being able to finish your build contract?
Yeah, so if you are in that situation, it depends how far along you are in the project, but typically you'll basically have another contractor have to step in. The issue is basically, you have to indemnify the works done to date, because obviously someone else has done those works, so you have to get what's called indemnity policies to sort of ensure the credibility of the works done, and some contractors don't like to build on the back of other people's work, so you have to basically be able to mirror the correct indemnity policy on the works done with a contractor that can work on those previous works, and still they sometimes make you waiver certain rights around quality and claim backs, because they say, well, basically it's, we can't guarantee the quality of the foundation, so we can't then guarantee that our roof is okay. It's like they use it as like a get out of jail clause basically, and that's the biggest issue, is sort of mirroring the new contractor on the works of the old one. So in some ways you almost want them to go bust right at the start or right at the end. If they go bust in the middle, that's normally the worst.
Cool. Sarah asked, would you provide the option agreement template with the program?
Yep, the option agreement template is included, exclusivity agreement template's included, I think an unconditional purchase contract's also included.
And Gerard asked, what questions should you ask the main contractor?
Oh, good question. So normally, the good thing about the banks is they ask a lot of the really pressing questions of the contractor, which one thing I do like. But yeah, I like to ask about the mainly questions around the other contracts they have at the minute, because I'd like to know basically what projects and at what price, and then I basically would have my employer's agent sort of vet those to a certain degree, just to see, do we think any of them are highly exposed. Some contractors even let you see their cash flows, because that's important. Can they service their creditors? Because if they can't service their creditors, then they come unstuck. So some contractors are very open book in that way. Not all though.
Cool. Jack asked, can you insure against contractors going bust?
No. Not well, at least not that I'm aware of. You can't, technically you are able to claim on them, but the issue is, so if the contractor goes bust, technically you're meant to be able to claim on them, but obviously if they've gone bust, it's because they've got lots of people claiming on them, and they don't have enough money to pay it, so
it's a kind of a difficult one. Yes, that's in place, but is there any money left in the pot to claim against? But that's where you've got to ideally just find the deal that has the margin, so that if that happens, you can afford to just pay another contractor maybe a little bit more. You can pay for them indemnity policies. It's not nice. It may take away all that extra nice margin you made in planning, and you may just about get a 20% margin, which is rubbish and not a nice situation to be in. But at least it's not the whole deal being ruined. It's just annoying, maybe a bit more than annoying, you could say. Very stressful, and one of the worst things that could happen. But if the margin's there in the first place, you absorb that cost into the deal, which is the worst situation. But there are even worse situations to be in, and that's having the wrong deal and that happen.
Cool. Rima asks, would you wait for a mains contractor if they can't start your project, for example, for a few months because they are too busy with other contracts? And also shout out to Chris Colby, who just joined. So welcome to Chris. The group, welcome to the community.
It would depend on your funding situation. Basically, when you start building and you start drawing down funds, you also start drawing down the project management fee. So two things I'd be asking: will you have a debt that requires servicing in that time, and can you service it if so? So for example, if you'd bought on a bridging loan that only had a certain amount of time of wrapped interest and then it began being serviced, could you service that? One question. Question two, could you afford to wait for the cash flows that the project would provide you, i.e. the project management fees coming in? Do you have bills that imminently need paid and are going to be paid because of that? In which case, if that's the case, you would need to start the site and get a drawdown. So yeah, it just depends on mainly the financial situation. My recommendation is, if the project can afford a mains contractor, including allowing for a lead-in time, do it. Because the time it's going to take you to subcontract and the potential errors that you will make will cost you more in the long run, in my opinion. And I was actually having a conversation, it was actually with one of our investors the other day. I was saying that all it takes is for you to be too busy to miss one opportunity, one deal, and then therefore you lose all the profit in that deal, and that is the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. Because you were too busy subcontracting one deal, because you were pinching the pennies, not going with the mains contractor, that you've lost a potentially really lucrative deal. So it's always having that longer vision. What's the bigger picture here? What's my time worth? All those things, and that's why I favour mains contractors.
Cool. Dario asked, hi both, provided you are full-on letters, fully committed, what is a good number of letters to be sent on a weekly or monthly basis? What's the reply ratio on average? How long to get the first deal in place?
Yeah, so how many you send, I would say, would more depend. Let me sort of answer that in reverse. I would say typically a response rate of, what would you say, 7 to 10%?
10 to 15 we've had.
Yeah, 10 to 15%. So you've got to work back. Let's say you send 100 letters in a month, or a week, or whenever, and let's say 10 of those responds. That's 10 landowners you need to call, have conversations with, and 10 let's say of those 10, 8 want to pursue it further, 2 were just calling to tell you to bugger off. Let's say you have 8 landowners who want you to do a bit more work on the land. Okay, that's 8 lots of comparables you need to do, 8 lots of pro map designs, 8 appraisals, 8 negotiations you may have to enter into. Do you have the time to do that? If not, and that could take hours, I'd start with just trying to get one, assessing how long it takes you, or even just mock doing it. Find a site, appraise it, do it all without even response, just to gauge how long does it take me to do all of these steps. Because then working back, you can figure out, well, if I had 5 people wanting that, 10 people wanting that, 20 people wanting that, do I have the time to correctly service all these people? And work back from there to figure out how many letters you need to be sending a week based on your own time. Whether or not you're doing it part-time, full-time, kids, no kids, want a life, don't want a life.
Yeah. Keep the questions coming, guys. Have you ever used Help to Buy scheme, and do you recommend it to developers to help with excuse the motorbike going past in the background. Do you recommend Help to Buy to help with the sale? If so, how soon do we need to start the project?
Yeah, so Help to Buy can be, when we did register, it was quite a long process. So I'd just start it during the construction, quite early on, at least doing the registration. You can have it too early and it'd be ready rather than too late. It doesn't benefit you in the sense you don't get more money or anything, but it benefits you in the sense it can open up the pool of buyers because basically what Help to Buy does is it can mean some people can afford a house they wouldn't have previously been able to afford. So basically you get a bigger pool of buyers. Bigger pool of buyers means more competition. Abundance of choice of buyers means ultimately you're going to get a better price for the product. Did you agree as a previous estate agent?
Yeah,
yep.
Totally. Keep the questions coming, guys. I'm just trying to make sure I haven't missed any. Jared asked, what are the common mistakes people make when putting together an appraisal and in a presentation pack for investors?
Biggest mistake I see people make, it's because I'm weird, how many people don't allow a cost of funding? Blows my mind. But which is fine if they were only showing the appraisal as a pre-finance margin and therefore acknowledging the fact they know the real net margin is lower. But the amount of people that will show a profit and think that is the profit but just haven't allowed cost of funding is alarming out there.
Okay. Any questions you guys have specifically about the program, ask away as well. Rima asked, can you claim the VAT back on new builds built on these property developments like you can on a self-built home that's built from scratch?
Do you mean on the materials?
Yeah, well, it's just like be saying it's a self-build on the.
Yeah, so you'll claim
professional fees on.
You claim VAT back. One thing to mention is normally land. Sometimes land can be VAT elected at the point of purchase. Something we talk about in the program, which isn't necessarily an issue. You claim it back again. It's just a cash flow thing. But a lot of people don't realise that sometimes land can have VAT on it.
Okay. Let's have a look. More questions. Ty's said, can we watch the other recordings? Yes, they're available on the YouTube channel. They're going to be available until Sunday night. Dario asked, thank you for the answer, Rosey. So on average, how long will it take to have one deal signed? And lastly, when is the course starting?
Oh yeah, sorry, there was more parts to that question about the letters. It depends, obviously, a bit like I said. The more letters you send, the more responses, the more chances of deals. And it depends how you can service those. But I think reasonably, for a newbie, if I look at some of the newbies we've had, to learn it, solidify the learning, make approaches, negotiate, tie it up. I think 6 months is a good sort of time frame to look at. And what was the last bit of that question?
It is, when does the course start?
Oh, so it instantly. We'll get, once obviously we finish the call, we'll start the team enrolling the people that have signed up. You'll have your access, and it's lifetime access. So it's not something that only lasts, like, it's not a 6-week program, if that makes sense. It's a lifetime access.
Josh said, do you guys take on new investors, and how would we get in touch? My dad is looking at potentially investing, has a big cash pot. So I'm going to drop an email in there for you, Josh, and we can have a conversation.
Yeah, we're always open to taking on new investors. Obviously, we just have to, like you guys learned yesterday, certify people before we can discuss it too much. But yeah, always open.
Bogdan asked, as part of the programme, will we get your guidance and support at critical phases of our first development project?
Absolutely, that's what we're there for. And in that Slack channel, we have like the general channel where you can ask sort of general questions, but you can also private message me. So anything that's more sensitive that maybe you don't want to discuss on a Q&A or anything like that,
yeah, you can drop me a message in there and I can help you. So like things like looking over appraisals, I normally look over the appraisals for students. A lot of students use my solicitor, for example, because I introduce them because I know obviously they're good. You know, everything like that where I can help, I do. Even if it's just sometimes to be like, yeah, you're on the right path, keep going. Just that little boost. And
Irene asked, how much would you charge for sourcing fees for the X's that you mentioned for the for packaging land deals?
So it varies. You can either do a percentage like I used to, which is like 2 or 3% of the purchase price, or you can do a fixed rate. So you could be like, you know, depending on the margin between what it's worth and what you've optioned it up at, you could say I want 20,000, I want 50,000. You know, I've, as a developer, paid agents like a flat rate of 100,000 before, just for the intro to the site. So, and that was even on a site that they didn't have under option. They just happened to know the landowner.
Rima asked, what amount would you class as a small cash pot? Well, it depends on what you'd be looking to go down, but it's so subjective. In terms of if you want to get into the smaller developments, maybe 1 to 5 houses.
Actually building out,
that could be anywhere from
50 to 100.
50 to 100, it of course can be less. With that, you're going to want to pool your money with some maybe investors as well, which we discussed yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
Brad asked, are the recordings on YouTube? I can only see 3 videos. Yeah, the 3 videos you can see are the recordings from Monday night, Tuesday night and Wednesday night. Dario said, sorry guys, my mind is exploding with questions as this sounds exciting. Is the Nimbus software access included in the membership? Rosie's just going to pop to the bathroom, but
I'll answer,
I'll answer some questions about the program while Rosie runs to the bathroom. So that is Nimbus software access included in the membership? No, so the membership isn't included in the program, but we've got a special partnership with Nimbus where there's a discount on the software as well. So by joining that, you can get access to that discount. Any other questions you have, Dario, fire away. We're happy to answer them. Bogdan's asking about the support. So the Q&A calls are the best ways to get support, and then the Slack workspace as well. But just to reiterate, obviously the bonuses. So the first 10 that joined today, I don't know, I think there's only a couple spaces left. I'll have to double check, but anyone that joins, any of the first 10 to join, book in a one-on-one coaching and strategy session with Rosey where you just thrash it out for an hour, put an action plan in place, and then anyone that joins before we wrap up shortly will be invited to a VIP lunch and mastermind session.
Sorry about that, guys. Any other questions for me?
Sandy asked, what is the difference between Nimbus and ProMap?
So ProMap is, I don't know what your class it is, it's like an OS software, so it uses OS maps and it's what you will do your drawings on, or you can buy like to scale maps from there, whereas Nimbus is your mapping software for actually buying title information, doing a lot of your site checks, due diligence, and actually where you'd probably sit and spot your opportunities.
Cool. Rima asked, can you recommend some good mains contractors / solicitors / quantity surveyors, please? in brackets, being cheeky, but can you actually please recommend some?
The main contracts are going to depend on the project, on the size of them, and the location. And then, what was the other recommendations?
Solicitors, quantity surveyors. It just depends what it's for, really. Because
there's not just. It depends on the job as to who I'd go to for each, if that makes sense. It's not me not trying to give you details, but yeah, if it's a particular type of option, particular type of even seller would vary the solicitor I use. I've got solicitors that I would use if I'm buying from a company who I think are going to be quite tricky to deal with. I've got solicitors that are particularly good with, like, your old Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It varies, and that's the importance of having a good professional team, is even that, knowing who to call on. Even architects, depending on the planning authority, I might vary my architect.
So Martin asked, how would you manage buy-to-let or lease financing, which obviously takes longer to get money back with selling with its 12 to 36 months? I think, Martin, if you can just rephrase that for us.
Yeah.
Chris asked, do we have plans to build abroad?
You want to, don't you?
Well, no,
not right now.
Not for a long time, but even then it would just be passion projects.
There's enough in the UK to do, which would be a lot easier, but yeah, maybe many years in the future, passion projects for fun.
Matt asks, how long does it normally take you to sell your houses on site?
It depends. A lot of agents work with a rule of thumb of 1 unit a month as like a good sales rate. But it depends on your marketing strategy, whether or not you're selling on or off plan, and the type of product. If it's more rental stock, you might sell a few units to multiple units to one purchaser. If it's rental stock, particularly apartments, that's not uncommon.
Keep the questions coming, guys. That's I think we're pretty up to date on the questions. The questions we have for you before we wrap it up is what are your hesitations around joining? Any hesitations you have around joining the program? Any further questions about the program specifically that you want to clarify? Let us know. But we will wrap up the live stream soon.
What was your favourite part? This has been, our first thing we've done like this. We've really enjoyed it. Hopefully, you guys got a lot of value out of it. Even, like I say, if for some of you it meant thinking actually development isn't for me, that in itself is value, and hopefully we provided that for you.
Jared asks, what 3D drawing software can you suggest to draw out the site for pre-planning and to show prospective clients? I think Revit is the software most architects use, isn't it? Yeah,
or some of them still do a lot of their rendering, I think, on Revit, but a lot of drawings on AutoCAD. But it's not really your place as the developer to do that. Really, that's going to be what your architect does for you.
Ali asks, do you know any simple drawing softwares for developers to use? I guess ProMap.
ProMap's probably as simple as it gets. If you can use AutoCAD, but to be honest, for the extra that I get out of AutoCAD, I tend to just prefer ProMap. This is like something I tend to explain to the students is, you aren't an architect, don't try to be one. You need a certain level of knowledge, and it's good to be able to use ProMap to get an indication of number of units, but sort of beyond that, it's not necessary by any means. There's certain areas you need very in-depth skills, and that's in understanding funding, finding sites, purchase contracts, negotiation skills, but you don't need to be able to draw your own site plan. An architect will do that for you. So it's sort of knowing where to have the in-depth knowledge and where to have the, I don't know what you call it, the useful knowledge. Because obviously you want enough knowledge to have meaningful conversations with these people and understand the process and know what's happening, but you don't need to be able to use all the softwares and do it all yourself.
Cool. Sandy asked, can you recommend any good appraisal books? It's a bit of a difficult thing to have a book on.
My program?
Yeah, and an appraisal is just made up of so many different things.
I don't think I've ever read a book on appraisals, to be honest. I'm sure there are some out there, financial appraisals, because you can do financial appraisals in the context of many things, not just development. So I'm sure there are books out there. But one thing I'd say with appraisals is you need the understanding of everything that goes into it. Otherwise, it's just a spreadsheet with numbers on. But unless that's meaningful numbers and the correct numbers, then it's just a spreadsheet.
Martin asked, rephrasing this question, apologies, I read it wrong as well, about build to let. Financing of build to sell is usually on a term of 12 to 36 months, while build to rent obviously might take much longer to get the investor's money back. Have you ever developed such a scheme? How did you manage it, especially repayment to investors? E.g., what was the debt term?
I see. So typically in that situation, if your desired exit strategy is to build, let's say, a site of 10 units and then retain them all at the end, you still use development finance, and you would still finance it basically exactly the same as with a normal build to sell model. So you build it out on your standard development finance terms, let's say with equity partners, but it becomes a little bit more difficult if you've got a lot of equity from equity partners, because basically when you come to what you do is, let's ignore the equity partner for a second. Let's just say it's just a bank that's funding it and it's all your own equity. Then what happens is you get to the end of the project and you've refinanced all the units onto a commercial mortgage, and the refinance pays off the development loan, and the 23% profit stays in the deal as obviously the equity, so that the bank is only at what would that be, a 77% loan to value, or something like that, and that's how it works. Obviously, if you have a situation where there's equity involved, then basically what you might have to do is sell some of the units, pay down the debt, so that when you come to refinance, the money generated from the refinance can pay out the investors, or some investors actually are happy to retain a share of those properties, take a share of the income, which can either pay down that, depending on your agreement, it can pay down the debt or just be their profit as well. But they also get the capital appreciation over multiple years, and as it's possible, you refinance bits out if they choose to, or some of them use this as a way to actually build their own property portfolio. They may agree to have 2 units of the 10, but what's important is right from the get-go, the investor knows that that's your exit strategy, and they know basically they're most likely going to be tied into the deal for longer.
Okay, some other questions coming in. Let me find them. So Ali asked, what are your suggestions / tricks to help with quick sales? Well, I think there's 2 main things. One, make sure the properties are staged properly, staging with furniture or like a show home, and then also properly photographed and presented. Just that alone can make a massive difference. And then open house / launch events as well, where you just try and get as many people through the door, get them in the house, get them to fall in love, and
get like that buying frenzy going almost.
Yeah, and if the properties just aren't getting interest, it's going to be one of two reasons. One, they're not being marketed properly. So maybe the photos, the staging, etc. And then the second reason is the asking price will just be off. So readjust the marketing. If that doesn't work, look to readjust the pricing.
Yeah, if something's priced right, it'll sell, typically. Is a very key driving factor.
Cool. Ryan asked, can you clear up what is included with the BCIS online part? Regards.
So what you get is our costing calculator, which is a document which will help you fill in your appraisal sheet. And one of the elements of that costing calculator is build cost data from the BCIS website, which basically gives you different house types, different construction types, a price per square foot and a price per metre squared, depending which you work in. And then to the right of that panel, you've got, I think it's about 400 location factors from across the UK with basically an index number next to them. And depending on that, you have your mean data set, which is priced at 100, and your location factor will be a number different to that. If it was 98, that means the price per square foot in that location is 2% lower than the standard set of data you're given, so you reduce whatever price is in the standard data set by 2%, or if your number on that location factor was 110, it means it's 10% higher. But yeah, that's what you get, is you get that data collated for you.
Cool. Question, as a newbie going into development full time, can I pay myself a monthly salary from property development?
You would be able to start paying yourself a monthly salary from when it becomes like a monthly cash flow, as in you have monthly money coming into the business to then pay yourself. You have to be on site building out to get those project management fees, which are monthly. Other than that, you'd be getting sort of big chunks of money. So let's say you did an assignable option, you might get £15,000 as a fee for that in one go. Obviously, you could pay yourself that in full, you could keep it in the business and pay yourself monthly. You know, how you then chose to work with that is sort of your own choice, I guess. Which is why a lot of people, unless they have a big cash pot behind them, or they already have maybe a rental portfolio creating them a monthly cash flow, most students will sort of learn the ropes by doing those sorts of assignable option deals alongside their normal job, because A, you can in terms of timing, but B, because obviously they still need that income in the form of their normal day-to-day job.
And I think that is most of the questions. We'll give it 3 or 5, well, just under 5 more minutes, guys, and then we'll wrap it up. If you want to take advantage of the bonus. And Dario asked, I have last question, which letters management software do you use or recommend? We don't actually use one. We've kind of done it manually in-house. There are a few. I know other developers use, there's a name of a company I can't think of off the top of my head, but
There's MailChimp as well.
No, it's not MailChimp.
That's not a software, that's a company that do it for you. We have a tracking software ourselves which links to our templates, letters, and then we use a mail merge, like an add-on into Google Sheets. We use that then to do the actual mail merge for us.
Cool. Are architects a good place to start asking around for mains contractors?
Yeah, architects would have some good contacts. Your probably best point of call is like your construction consultant or employer's agent, because they're the ones that place tenders typically for you. So obviously, if they're doing it for you, they're doing it for other people. So they're placing tenders with contractors all the time. So
normally them and their network. It's a good place to start.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll email out all the replays, all the information you need, and we'll also give some people the option to book on a call with our team as well, to discuss any questions, get a demo of the program, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll probably go live in the Facebook group tomorrow. Just, you've had a lot to digest. Any questions, I'll probably at some point go on there tomorrow for you guys. But yeah, just thank you again for all of you for spending your precious evenings with me, sat at a computer. We really appreciate it. All the kind words and everything hasn't gone unnoticed. And yeah, well done again. Any questions, drop us a line.